So you've been saving and saving every single day, planning to purchase your first or maybe your seventh home, and now you have a big down payment. Well, today we're going to be talking about, does this make sense to use that big down payment for the down payment or maybe something else? And we're getting after that topic right now. Let's get started. What's up, amazing people? I am Liz LeFore here with the MortgageLiz team, powered out of San Diego, California. And on this channel, we talk about everything that it's like to eat, sleep, live, and play here in San Diego. And we also talk about the home loan differences that vary between one or the other. Why one or why the other, or why either of them even make any sense. And with that, if that's the channel that you're looking for, you definitely need to click that subscribe button, click that little bell so you're reminded every single time I release a new video every single week. And honestly, my team and I are receiving phone calls and text messages every single day with people just like you that are thinking about moving and relocating to San Diego, California. So if you're thinking about doing the same, make sure that you give us a call, send us a text, or just an email, whatever is easiest for you. We got your back when you're moving to San Diego, California. Make sure you reach out to us. So the biggest misconception is that many home buyers or first-time home buyers think that they need 20, 30, 40% down, or maybe all of that money that they've been saving needs to go to their down payment. Just recently, I've been finding that a lot of clients just want to spend everything. But did you know that if you use that money, maybe in different sources, maybe paying off your debt, maybe paying off your debt and going towards a down payment, that the money that you use may be better fit doing it that way? In this video, we're going to be talking about and showing you the breakdown of those payments. What a typical car payment that could be anywhere between $500 and $600 is going to be maybe too much of a car payment, and it could equate to way more of a house if we just use some of that big down payment to pay off that car. I know, believe me, I get it. Nobody wants to really pay off the car. Who wants to pay $10,000, $15,000, $20,000 to a car payment? But when we look at the numbers, you're going to see what I'm talking about. Because just recently, I've ran into so many clients that have so much debt. And when we look at actually paying off their debt, they can buy so much more house with just spacing out the money, moving it a little bit over here and a little bit over there. And in this video, we're going to be talking a little bit more about that. So let's talk about some basic details. So for every $150 of debt that you have, it's going to equate to roughly $25,000 to $30,000 in a home price. So let's talk about that just a little bit. Okay, so an average car in San Diego is about $500 to $600 a month. And in fact, it's $554 is the average amount for California. So we're just gonna say even 500 bucks, okay? So 500 plus another 500, because we know we don't typically have just one car payment. I've had some families where they have 3, 4 car payments. They have another car payment for their daughter or their son, of which they may be paying for, but because you can't verify it, now you have to qualify with that car payment. So for the easy case, we're just going to assume that you have 2 car payments, okay? So let's look at this. At 2 car payments at $500, that equals $1,000. And so one of the calculations that we were just talking about is $150 per debt, which equates to about $30,000, okay, in sales price. We just said we have 2 car payments. That's $1,000. So when we divide $1,150, we're going to get 6.66%. So what does that really equate out to? So when we multiply 6.66 by what I said earlier, $30,000, then we get the total of what our sales price would actually be that we technically have in car payments. So when we calculate that, $150 times the 6.66 that we were just talking about, now you're talking about almost $200,000 in a house. So remember, you got 2 car payments, each for 500 bucks, totaling 1,000. If you divide the 1,000 by the 150, it's going to be 6.66. if we talk about what we said, every $150 equals $30,000 in new sales price. That means, again, you have, in lieu of those 2 cars in your driveway, you have $200,000 literally sitting in your driveway. And that's the reason why I tell my clients that it's really important to look at the overall situation, because the math truly does matter. It was really important that we look at the math as to where that money, where all that down payment that you've been saving for, where is it best used? So if we're talking about, do you pay off your car, which typically the average within California is that the balance of a car is about $20,000. So when we're talking $20,000, each for 2 cars, which is $40,000, and let's say we saved $100,000, we could potentially, yes, spend $40,000, but potentially increase our price of house by $200,000 just by paying off our car payments. So now let's take it one step further. The average person actually has about $6,481 in credit card debt. Well, we know that that's not common. A lot of people have way more than $6,000 in credit card debt. They may have $10,000, $20,000 in credit card debt. And for just something as small as $6,000, your monthly payment could be about $200 to $250. So let's just say even bracket right here, okay? Let's assume that you have, again, $250 for those $6,500 in credit card debt for $250 a month. What does that mean? That technically you're taking away $30,000 to $40,000 away from your price of house because you still have $6,400 in credit card debt. That's what I'm talking about when I talk about, does this make sense? Would this make sense to spend the money all towards your down payment, or does it make more sense to spend a little bit to the down payment, maybe a little bit to the closing costs, and a little bit to the debt, or maybe a little bit to the down payment and a little bit to the debt and holding to some of that money? Because truly $100,000 can go a much longer way when we spread the wealth in multiple different directions. So we've been talking about debt a lot of our conversation today. Now let's talk about the actual numbers as to what the typical person would have in debt. So we first have millennials. This would technically be the age of about 24 to 39, which on average has debt of a little under $79,000. Yes, for the age of 24 to 39. In fact, it's $78,396 in debt. Now let's talk about the next generation, Generation X. So Generation X is technically the ages of 40 to 55. 40 to 55, you would think that maybe they have a little less debt, maybe they have a little bit more debt. On average, 40 to 55-year-olds Generation X has on total of debt of $135,841 in total debt. All right, let's talk about the next one. So the next one is going to be our baby boomers, which is the average age of 56 to 74. So at this point, they're about retirement. So 56 to 74 is our baby boomers. And in this age bracket, on our baby boomers, they have an average of $96,984 in debt in total at this age. All these facts ends up coming from the 2019 Experian debt study that was done to give us this information. So it's really important to be able to see that a car is a debt. Credit cards are debt. They are all debts. And then when we start talking about the student loans, those are also debts. Don't assume that you're going to eventually get those student loans forgiven. I have yet to meet one person that has gotten them forgiven. And if you have, congratulations. But I have met so many more clients that assume they're going to be forgiven and then something falls through and then they don't. And now they have to pay all of this back and all of the accrued interest. And so it's just something to be able to notice that maybe the money is better used to not just the down payment. Now, let's take a look at the math. We're going to be sharing my screen and we're going to be looking at the breakdown. Remember, we were talking about $500 car payments, 2 $500 car payments, And we were talking about the credit card debt of a little under $7,000 for the total monthly payment at about $250 a month. And we're going to be looking at that right now. So I'm going to share my screen and let's take a look. All right, so right now we are looking at what I like to call a mortgage analysis. And on this mortgage analysis, we're going to be, again, comparing the down payment. Remember what we've been talking about. We have been saying that, does the math make sense? Does it make sense to use all your money for the down payment and not pay off your debt? Or does it make sense to use the money to pay off your debt? So when we're looking at these details, we're going to be able to share our screen and actually look at what we're referring to. So here in our analysis for our mortgage details, we're first looking at our rent situation. So remember, when we look at rent in general, of course, we're not going to be gaining any benefit based off of that rent. So we're not going to have any tax deductions, any interest deductions. And that's the reason why down here, we're not growing anything over here. And of course, over here, we have no deductions. So there's no net money that we're able to write off, okay? So moving on a little bit farther. So we have our total rent that we're going to be looking at, which is right here at $2,500. And so 2,500, then we start looking at, okay, now how do these numbers break out? Okay, well, if we looked at the next 5 years here at the 159,000, this number here at the 60-month mark, you will notice that you'll end up paying here $159,274 for just rent. Remember, rent in this situation is $2,500. So when we go at just 5 years, we're looking at $159,000. Going one step further, okay? Then we're going to look at the next detail here, which is going to be the 15-year mark right here, which is now we're over $500,000 at $557,967 in just rent. So remember what I've said before. People ask all the time, when is it a good time to buy? When is it a good time to buy? It's a great time to buy when you are financially ready to buy a home. Your income, your assets, your credit, all of that fall in line and you're ready to go based off of that information, okay? So it's really important that not buy a home because it's the best interest rate. It's a great market. All of that's irrelevant if we're not financially ready to be able to buy a house. So going on from here, again, you're going to be talking like $557,000 for rent just in 15 years, okay? Moving on. Remember what we've been talking about this whole time, that down payment, okay? So if you were to put 20% down, 20% down at a $600,000 house, 20% down is $120,000. Okay, so 120 would leave you alone at 480. And then just giving a rough estimate of 2.75. Keep in mind, rates change all the time. Rates between 1 year ago to today are significantly different. So don't hold me by this rate because they're going to significantly change every single day and all throughout the day, okay? So based on this payment, this calculation, you're looking at a $4,009 payment. So what is actually included in that $4,009 payment? When we look at the 20% down option, you'll notice that the sales price is $600,000. It does include your principal and interest, your taxes, your insurance, the mortgage insurance. Oh, no mortgage insurance. Remember, we put 20% down. So no mortgage insurance here. So that's great news. It's $2,700. But wait, I said your payment was not $2,700. I said it was higher, right? When we looked at the payment and we were looking at it here, we saw the payment was going to be $4,009. Well, how did I get to $4,009 when in fact you look at the detail and the payment shows $2,709 to the bank? What we're forgetting about is the debt. Remember what I said before. You have a car payment of $500, you have another car payment of $600, plus you got credit cards of $200. So 5 plus 600 is 1,100, plus 200 is $1,300. That is this right here. So why am I putting this in here? The reason why I'm putting this in here is because it's still money out of your pocket. It's money that's not going to stay inside of your bank account. So you earn the money, it goes into your bank account, it does not stay in your bank account. It's going to come out to pay bills. And that's why you have to compare apples to apples. And in doing that, that's why we have this at $1,300. So we add your mortgage payment at $2,709 plus the debt of $1,300. which equals $4,009.56. And so this is all based off of a calculation of an income of $110,000 going down, looking at a debt of $1,300. So when we look at these calculations, we want to be able to properly determine whether we can even qualify for these numbers. And when we look at this here, when we are comparing this, we have 20% down basing on the same sales price of the $600,000 right here. You will notice that you can actually, unfortunately, not qualify for this amount. Why is that? Well, you're spending 57.9% of your income. Even though you make $110,000 a year, you have bills of $1,300 a month. Total money for the mortgage of $2,709 that we were just looking at, you are spending too much. And so based on that, even though you put 20% down, this math would not work out. Unfortunately, odds are you would probably be denied. And so that's why I say, let's use the money where it's best used, where it's most wisely used to be able to get you to qualify, right? So in this case, we're spending too much money. Okay, we're spending about $133,000 to be able to use the down payment for the 60. Scrolling right up into here where we look at the down payment of $120,000 right here. And then scrolling down, showing that the final amount due would be $133,000. Well, what's the $133,000? That includes closing costs. So just a little brief overview that we would go into closing costs are right in here. You're going to have your title, your escrow, your lender fees. You're going to have other things such as your taxes, your insurance, your 1 year of insurance policy. If your taxes are due, all of that stuff comes into play. So those are the things that we typically forget about. When we look at the bottom line at $133,000, it is not just the down payment at $120,000. So when we truly look at these numbers, that the $120,000 is not best used towards the down payment. One, because we don't qualify, but two, because when you look at the cash flow, how much you're spending out of your pocket, that's $4,009. Now, let's look at what if we were to pay off the car? Where would you be? Well, now comparing over here, same $600,000, but now we're not putting 20% down, we're putting 10% down. So in doing that, you'll notice right over here that the payoff car situation is 90% of the value, not 80% of the value, okay? So when we look at these numbers, you are still going to, again, qualify with everything, all of your payments, principal, interest, taxes, insurance, mortgage insurance if you got it, car payments, and credit cards, all of it you still got to qualify with. So we look at the payment, $600,000, 10% down, not 20% down, $2,204, including your taxes. When you got your insurance, here's your mortgage insurance. Remember what I've said in previous videos. If you don't know what mortgage insurance is or how significantly different they're going to be depending on your credit score on a conventional loan, you need to go back to my other video that I did that is conventional versus the FHA. And that's going to show you the differences and how significantly different a mortgage insurance can be if you got a lower score or a higher score. So in this case, we were comparing a score of 740. That is why it's a lot lower. So 740 credit score gives us mortgage insurance about $229, sales price here for about $600,000, monthly payments $3184. So one would think, oh, Liz, that is too much money. Why are we going to pay $3184 when I could pay $2709? I mean, like the payment's $500, almost $500 less expensive if we were to just put 20% down in this option right here, okay? However, this is what I did over here. In this option right here, I decided to pay off my debt, okay? So now I don't have the one car payment for $500. I don't have the second car payment for $600. I don't have the credit cards for that $6,000 that we were talking about. Payment was $200. Now I do not have that debt for qualification purposes. So when we look at the money as to what's going out, you'll notice that the total cost out of your pocket does no longer include that monthly debt, right? So we look at the total amount of your monthly payment and it's totally gone. And so what your cash flow out of your pocket, not the money that is not comparing to what we were doing before, where it's the mortgage plus all of your debt at $4,009. Now it's just the mortgage, remember, because we paid off all that debt and we're not getting the new debt. So now you're only spending $31.84. So in fact, you are going to spend 10% for your down payment of the $600,000, right? So 60,000 instead of 120. So then we got an extra $60,000 to be able to use to pay off our debt, which then gives us the ability of having more cash flow, more money in our bank that stays in our bank. And so instead of spending 4,000, you'll spend 31.84. And so you spend those 60,000. Yes, it's hard. I'm not going to lie. It's not easy paying off the 2 card payments and paying off the credit cards. But in this case, you have almost $1,000 more in your bank account than you did if you spent the money to your down payment. And so that's why I say that in most cases, it may actually benefit you to pay off this car or pay off some debt instead of using the down payment. However, if you do not have debt, then the down payment money for having everything go towards the down payment is going to be the better option, because obviously you got nowhere else for the money to go if we're trying to get a lower monthly payment. But it's really important to be able to compare apples to apples. Where is the money best used? Don't let a lender tell you, let's just put 20% down because it's going to be so much easier. That is not the case. They will not be paying your mortgage. They will not be calling you to help you out when you need assistance to pay that payment when it comes up. So you got to make sure that you are financially ready, number one, financially able to pay this mortgage payment, regardless of what a lender tells you that you can or cannot qualify for. So in this case, we were looking at the 20% down. Not only were we paying the $120,000 here, but we were also paying the closing costs, which is $133,000. Coming over here, we're looking at the $60,000 for the down payment for the 10%, plus paying the closing costs, and we have about $73,000 that you've got to pay to the mortgage, not including the debt that we were just talking about. So I know this is a lot of information. Believe me, I'm not expecting you to be a pro or an expert on these details by any means, but it is truly very important to be able to know where your money is going. And so with that being said, if you have a question on this, make sure you reach out to us. We would love to be able to break down this number, break down this math for you and your family too. So now next, let's get back to the video. All right, so today, amazing people, we've talked about, do you spend your money that you've been saving, and put down that big down payment, or do you spread the wealth and spread it a little bit all over the place to make sure that the money is best used in multiple different locations instead of just the down payment? I know this is a lot of information, and by no means do I expect you to be an expert on all of these details, but we have an amazing team that's backing us up to be able to help you out when you're ready to make that move. And so depending on whether you're thinking about it, curious about it, not really sure about it, but having some lingering questions, whether it's about the San Diego area, about a community, or just curious about the monthly payment or how all of this down payment stuff works, that is what me and my team are here for. Make sure that when you're ready, you give us a call, send us a text, or an email, whatever works for you. We are here, and we're here and got your back when you're ready to make that move to San Diego, California. And don't forget, there's a whole bunch of videos right over here that you definitely need to check out. And you want to make sure that you're clicking that subscribe button and that little bell so that way you're reminded every single time I release a new video. Because every week we're talking about what it's like to live in San Diego, eat, sleep, play, and all about the best home loans that work for you and your family when you're here in San Diego. And until next time, have a good one.